And welcome back to another week of the Five Guys Online. We have a lot to talk about, gentlemen. Welcome to the 45th episode of the broadcast.
Wow.
It's been a very busy week, maybe not the best week in news, so it's fitting that this be the 45th show representing twice failed President Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States of America. And speaking of the twice impeached Florida retiree Donald Trump, in our 45th episode, we had some census data that came out last week. Dr. Pickett, my friend, how are you? And what did you think of this census data that showed a continuous uptick, exactly as many people knew it would be, in the number of minority citizens within the United States of America? In 1980, we had a white population of almost 80%. In 2020, we now have a white population of almost 59%. For the first time, the minority majority is becoming, for some, a reality. What are your thoughts?
I know it's freaking white people out. I know they are freaked out because of the fact that they are, they already, I find it interesting because of the fact that I think we had this conversation previously, even though in essence they are the minority, they're losing ground as it pertains to population. Unfortunately, they still hold, as far as the finances, they're still responsible. They're still over the finances. They're still over, the educational concept. They're still over. So they still run much aspects of the country. But we also have to be mindful that this is also it's very rough data because it's skewed because there were still quite a few people who did not participate in the census. So it makes me even wonder and ask the question, how further along does that number hit, and how many more Black people are there or minority individuals in this country? So I think that these are kind of numbers we have to do a better job educating people on what this actually means. And hopefully we can start really, if you will, it's wishful thinking, but hopefully we can actually start this whole process to start realizing that we do have, voter power. We have the ability to do so. Now we just got to start educating people on what to do with these numbers.
Yeah, gentlemen, what are your thoughts? DeAndre, I think you make some really good points about the numbers, and I do not believe that any group in the United States of America is a monolithic group, right? So there is no such thing as like every white person may think this way, every Black person thinks this way, every gay person thinks this way, every straight person thinks this way, and we see that continuously. I don't know if the change in the census data is going to actually make a real difference in the actual culture of the United States of America. But hopefully it's going to spur a change in how business as usual happens in America. I think that we're going to have bad business first before we have the real change we want to see. I do believe that it's a notion in the minds of some people. I'm talking specifically, gentlemen, about Republicans and conservatives, that a more diverse America is a bad thing. We know, however, that is not the case. But I think they believe that. And because of this belief, I think that Republicans and conservatives particularly are going to do a lot of things to try their very best to change these numbers and hinder these demographics. I think they'll do some things that are very obvious politically and some things that are not so obvious and that may be a little dastardly. Let me give you an example about what I mean when I say dastardly. When COVID-19 first came out, we had strict restrictions, strict rules, strict guidelines. Everybody was on board for protecting their fellow Americans. However, when the data came out that the majority of people getting infected and then dying from COVID-19 were Black and brown people, we had a shift in Republican policy. Now we see a shift in mask mandates where many Republican leaders like DeSantis and Abbott of Texas, their children go to private schools with mask mandates, but their citizens in their states go to public schools, many of them being Black and brown people, where they're not even allowing mask mandates to take place. That's what I mean by dastardly activities. But in the end, I don't think it's going to matter because America will be America and diversity will always win out.
Yeah, I agree with you both. One in particular state that really shocked me was Texas. In the midst of me sort of going through, my notes and research for it, I stumbled into an article from the Texas Tribune. So according to, again, what Dr. Pickett said about this past census that we took, Hispanics are now about to be the majority of the demographic in Texas. So in 2010, it was roughly around 11 million white people and only 9 million Hispanics. However, in 2020, per the census, they had a 39.75% uptick in terms of white people. So it was like 11,500,000 from 11,300,000. Now Hispanics went from 9,400,000 to 11,400,000 in 2020 or what have you. So going back to Dr. Pickett's point, how many Hispanics didn't take, the census? Could that number be larger? So on and so forth. And as the article sort of went through it, they talked about, of course, what you said, Zach, the political side of things, how a lot of these Hispanics are in the Democratic controlled regions and counties and part of the state. So in my opinion, politically, I think Texas is the one to watch come this next election cycle, if you will, because they may pull a Stacey Abrams moment and flip blue because, I don't think the Hispanic Texans are like the Florida Texans, if you will. You get where I'm going.
Yeah, and Vince, though, but you have to your point, Republicans watch the census. Republicans have looked at this census, hence the reason why they have been baiting and so much going after. You see it in Florida, you see it in Texas, you see it in California, if you will. You see it in areas where a heavy minority, particularly brown individuals who are highly populated, and Republicans are baiting them. Hence the reason why you saw in Texas, you see more Hispanics that are actually bumping up and voting for Republicans. You're seeing that in Florida. And so Republicans have been following the census. The Democrats have got to do a better job in using census data to pull in and draw in and not just speak to, one demographic. You have to find a way to speak to all demographics and what can I do for you? Unfortunately, Republicans are just doing it just a little bit better. And so Democrats have to find a better way to use census to work for them.
Republicans use the census data better to gerrymander and to suppress votes, but they're not speaking to any demographic except white males. That's Correct. It. That's all they care about. And they count on white males to subjugate the voices of white females in submission and vote like them. Republicans then use Russian influence to impact Black and brown people on Facebook. It was revealed that a lot of the COVID-19 misinformation was coming from the same Russian bots that were spreading misinformation around the Trump-Biden race and all of these lies they've been perpetuating. And so they're using that specifically to kill us on purpose.
But Zach, I agree with that, but you have to look at it from the premise of the reason why they can do that is because they're in power. So it's kind of like when you're the one in power, especially if you have, and this is not generalizing all Hispanics or those, but we have people who don't know the politics, who don't know they don't know the things. You can tell people anything they want to hear if you're the one in power. Like, listen, we can do this for you. Why? Because we're in power. Texas can say that. Republicans say, listen, we can do all these things for you because we can do this, we can do that. The Democrats can't do it for you. The Democrats can't do this. They don't have the vote. They can do it right. They can talk about that right now, even in Congress. The fact that we still have 2 senators on our side who don't necessarily fully vote like this. So Republicans have talking points to say, listen, they can't even get their people to do these things for you in match. So now they have leverage. And so to agree with everybody's point, I just think Democrats got to do a better job with using it to their advantage because Republicans are.
Vince, you were going to add in.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to talk about just a diversity argument, if you will. I know back during the election cycle, when the DNC and the RNC was on, one of the talking points that I was very affirmed in and actually respected the fact in returns of the Democratic Party is that DNC convention was sheerly diversity. You had every single walk of life, every single ethnicity, minority, whatever you could think of was represented versus when the RNC came on, it was primarily, the Caucasians. You had the token white guy, the token Hispanic lady here or there, what have you. And I just think as America right now, even how we sort of voted, though we didn't, Trump still had a quote unquote surprisingly shocking turnout than I think a lot of people expected. At the end of the day, I think people still voted based off of conscience, based off of heart, based off of integrity, and based off of what are you illustrating to me? Like, what do I see as an Hispanic person? If I see the Democratic people have a multitude of a lot of Hispanic people in that party, then I'm going to vote with that because they're representing me. And I think that's what a lot of, hopefully this uptick in the Hispanic demographic in Texas will just work, I guess, in that favor to a degree. And I also want to say, to your point, Dr. Pickett, I think that's why you have a Stacey Abrams that's on tour right now doing town halls across the nation to inspire, to encourage more people that was in her position to sort of shift the tides, create change, and get into that power, those power seats that the Republicans have been holding so long in Texas.
And so, we have here, Dr. Pickett wants to know more from our audience. I want to show this brief graphic here that shows, again, parts of the United States of America where we have the increase in where the white share of county population under the age of 15 is drastically different. These are individuals who, if they stay where they currently are, you're going to have a massive shift in demographic influence. Not only will you have in Arizona that will truly be minority majority, but also the same thing will go for Texas, two states, Texas being solidly Republican, Arizona having gone this year for Biden, but a toss-up state. But take a look at the South. Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, parts of Louisiana, South Carolina, North Carolina, and parts of Virginia are certainly going to be predominantly minority states. If this holds true, and if the Republican Party continues to play the racial political games they played, we will never have another Republican majority in the House, the Senate, or in the White House. There's some things that have to change. And you're right, Horatio, also when it comes down to Alaska, but Alaska being a little bit different. I also want to say, I understand that we see this as a lesser of two evils. We are going to talk about some evil in the very next segment. But I think that it was a clear difference between Joe Biden and Donald J. Trump. I think their vision for America, I think what they claimed they wanted to do and where they want to take the country drastically different. I don't think and cannot say that I see Joe Biden as a lesser of two evils. I think this was a situation of someone who was trying or attempted to do the morally right thing in politics and someone who wanted to continue to do the morally corrupt thing in politics. But that's just my opinion. When you talk about evil, however, I have been and will continue to be, for the moment, a supporter of Joe Biden and his administration. But I am exceptionally disappointed in the United States' failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. Gentlemen, before I give you any insight into why I say this is a failed withdrawal and why I am extremely disappointed, almost on the verge of angry with Joe Biden and his administration, what are your thoughts on what we have now seen this past weekend in regards to what's happening in Afghanistan?
It's heartbreaking. I've seen a lot of video footage and photos just to see that there are people who are trying to pry their way onto a plane that's headed to the United States just so they can flee their country. I don't have a great deal of background on the situation. I know Zach will fill in some of that information for us, but it is just terrifying to know that there are children there, there are families, there is a stigma in America as it relates to people of the country, just based off of things that have happened in the past. But at the end of the day, I think that as humans, this is a humanitarian issue. This is not an issue of where these people are. It is a humanitarian issue. And we all have to, as we always do, come together when we see something wrong happening. So it's heartbreaking for me.
I agree with Darius, and I know Zach and other people on the cast will kind of fill me in more on the backstory. But just to see the videos I've seen of people jumping on these planes, fighting to get on these planes, jumping on, it's just a mess. Just to get to a better country, United States or whatever. So I am curious to know more of the back end and why all this is actually going on, just to get a better understanding.
Yeah, man, it's a lot to unpack for me. Just going through my notes, one thing that definitely stood out beyond I guess, the war talking points in regards to humanity. Why did Joe Biden decide to pull out during fighting season? It's the summertime in Afghanistan. The Taliban, through history, has shown that they have record numbers and more violence and more fighting through these months. Why not wait till the wintertime when there's less numbers and so on and so forth for the army to, you know, be maneuvered out, whatever the case is. Another question is, why was the evacuation seemingly slow or delayed? The fact that they rushed the capital like super fast, I think just through the Biden administration's representatives, just they were all just in the press conferences that I've watched today, they were all seemingly shocked that, you know, the Taliban was able to just take over the capital as fast as they did. And one thing that really got under my skin that I recently learned, why weren't the visas for both men and especially women considered faster to get Afghan people to the States, other allied countries? Because apparently the Afghan government, through the transition since the United States has been there helping out the people or what have you, they still have customs that women cannot receive passports, women cannot receive visas. So even in the midst of these people being evacuated, Afghan people being evacuated to the States, there's still a lump sum of women and daughters that are being left, you know, high and dry because the Afghan government has customs and policies or whatever that won't allow people. So there was actually this woman, this Afghan woman news reporter that was in the press conference today, talking to one of the Biden people, and she was just in tears, like Flora, like, this is my mother, this is my sister, these are our daughters that we are leaving because for whatever reasons there's no collaboration or establishment that could be made between the U.S. and the Afghan government to allow women to receive that. So now what's going to happen to them? And for me, in general, I just think the Biden really needs to work on timing. I think that's one thing that is becoming a pain point for his administration thus far. Going back to the COVID situation, I believe that he was premature with reopening the country. We saw that the administration was delayed with extending the nationwide eviction legislation. And now was this the appropriate time for us to pull out? Nobody's negating the fact that this was America's longest war. They've been to war in 20 years. I was 11 years old when this war started. I'm 31 right now. So I get it. They spent $3 trillion on it. Like, there's so many, I guess you can say, pros about us pulling out.
I wasn't even born.
So America entered the war. You funny. America entered the war against terrorism. They didn't enter the war to restore a country. That was not what they initially entered into. And then the fact that Biden said it's been 2 Democratic presidents and 2 Republican presidents that has been overseeing the war thus far, and the buck stops with him. That is his quote. And he doubled down on his decision to, you know, stay there. But there's some humanitarian things that I think that the administration could have vetted out better, you know, to assist in just the optics and the safety of the people.
You know, I've taken a lot of heat on Instagram. I posted my little video, and, you know, I emphasize, you know, my thoughts. I do think this is an absolute failure for American foreign policy. You know, and again, I understand, you know, Casey, Dr. Washington picked up a good point. Afghanistan cannot be won, but Afghanistan can be transitioned over. And so there's some background I want to give there, right? And then also when we say, you know, giving that insight as well to, you know, Jason is destined to fail. Again, I agree with President Biden when he says that the buck stops there. I think the buck absolutely does stop there because he is a president who made the premature announcement that he was withdrawing all American forces from Afghanistan, which empowered the Taliban to regain control of the country. The way that information was given to me was not appropriately done. I do not think that the Biden administration listened to or took the appropriate advice of the foreign intelligence community that said this would happen. Literally, there are clips of the former press conference when a reporter said, intelligence shows us that the nation will collapse within days. And he said, that's not going to happen. We're not going to have another Saigon. We're not going to have another Vietnam. It's not going to happen. That's exactly what happened. When the intelligence is there, you need to listen to the intelligence. In the same way this man is telling us to listen to the science, he needs to listen to the international intelligence around what's going to happen. And President Biden didn't do that. Here's a brief graphic that gives a little bit, I know you can't really read it, but this is a graphic. If you screenshot, you want to go back to it, that kind of breaks down the debacle of what's happening in Afghanistan. This goes all the way back to 1933, when you had lots of British influence in the region and imperialism. And then when they tried to pull out, the region became extremely destabilized. America's involvement came in play in the late 70s, early 80s, when the nation of Afghanistan began to consider communism as a route that they would go. America intervened and got involved and empowered what became Al-Qaeda and the Taliban to fight against their communist leaders in government, as well as Russian-influenced leadership. We helped them overthrow their actual communist government and led to this mass destabilization of the nation. It is Zachary's opinion that because of that, we owe these people a debt, that we have a responsibility to undo the damage that we caused in that nation. Then it became a back and forth between supporting the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda who we call terrorists, and the warlords that we overthrew, because they go back and forth, back and forth. Many of the warlords that we overthrew in the late 80s actually rose to power and sit in seats of power right now. When you look at why is it that the Afghanistani military fell apart, let me tell you why it fell apart. And this is what President Biden should have known. You have about 75,000 75,000 Taliban operatives in this country. 75,000. You have 300,000 Afghanistani military people. 300,000. They should massively outnumber the Taliban that's there, and they do. But here's the thing. When it was announced that Americans were going to withdraw, there were numbers of deals being broken under the table between the Taliban and these military members to defect. So you have actual Afghanistani military members sworn to protect and uphold the Afghanistani government who left the government and now joined the Taliban. When they joined the Taliban, they brought with them their weapons, their guns, their military knowledge, and all of these things. And people are leaving so rapidly, they're leaving behind helicopters, tanks, machine guns, bombs. All the spoils of war are now being left behind so that the Taliban can continue to wage war on the people. And that's what's heartbreaking. And again, I'm not having as much sympathy for the Afghanistani military elected leaders as I'm having for the women and the girls in Afghanistan. There were heartbreaking stories of where 9-year-old girls were being taken from their homes and made to become the brides of the military men at 9 years old. This is the world that we went into 20 years ago hoping to change. This is the world that gave us Malala, who was shot in the head because she wanted to get an education. And if you can tell me that we shouldn't feel some level of responsibility to these people, then I think that you are lacking human decency. But again, that's just my opinion and how strongly I feel about the rights, the international rights of people in this world where we made the mess. We made the mess. It would be one thing if the Afghanistani culture was allowed to exist and grow and evolve on its own. But we got involved and we stunted their growth. We halted their development and we ruined an entire nation of people. And now we're just going to pack up and leave.
And Casey, I will honestly say I read your comments and I was going to make a statement about that. I do honestly say that I agree with everything that has been said, but I also have to shift blame a little bit before that as well, because we were making mistakes way before we even got to President Biden. Because if you remember, the number 45 signed an agreement with the Taliban in 2020 and stated that he was going to exit from Afghanistan in May of 2021. The agreement also included the releasing of 5,000 prisoners who had ties to Israeli and Al-Qaeda, which also tied probably to this particular issue. It just so happens, though, it's funny because of the fact that earlier today, the Republican National Convention took off their website a portion congratulating President number 45 on his release and decision to come out of Afghanistan. So they knew it was an issue. And so again, I am not arguing the fact that, we definitely did a pull out too soon, but this was already in play, unfortunately, a year before this even happened. So we failed them even before Biden made the determination to expand. He was already in agreement. And truth be told, number 45 was actually pissed about the fact that we didn't pull out sooner. And so we failed them way before we got to this point. And so I just hate the fact that we're now here, but we've been failing them for quite some time.
We have. I mean, again, it was a series of presidents from Reagan to Bush to Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden. But Biden right now is president, and that is where this blame now lies. The number of American casualties and the issues in Afghanistan had quailed, and they were going down. Now, again, a lot of that probably was a result of background deals and secret underground meetings between these defected military leaders and the Taliban, where they were brokering deals. I get all that, but the bottom line is President Biden is president, and these are, in his words, in my opinion, led to this ultimate downfall and the absolute failure and the miscalculations around how soon it would be before the Taliban forces could take over this entire nation. It literally happened within 2 weeks. Never before has something like this been seen. And again, Biden has to take responsibility for that. And, he could, in the same way that President Biden came in and quickly undid a number of things President Trump did, this too could have been quickly undone. He could have made further commitments to stabilizing the area and looked at how to bring in foreign allies to support that work and even incentivize those allies. We give over $500 million a year to Israel. Maybe we need to look at giving $500 million to someone else to help stabilize the areas that we promise and pledge to support.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because just really quickly, that was just one of my thoughts. I didn't go too deep into my research about it, but the Taliban taking over Afghanistan again, that is a threat to every country that shares American values, that shares democracy. So in terms of just the global response, because this is crimes against humanity or what have you. So when you think of our allies, the European Union, all of these other countries that could be potentially affected, is like, what will they share a role in this situation? Because just as much as we can be threatened by terrorism, they can be threatened too. And I understand, like you said, Zach, yes, we did cause the mess, but the terrorism, in my opinion, like we say, racism, they just, it's a culture. They just want to hate. They just want to kill. They just want to destroy. They don't care who, what, when, where, or how, as long as their mission gets accomplished, and that's what they're gonna do. So I'm really curious to see how this will continue to unfold globally the weeks to come.
I don't agree with they just want to kill and destroy, right? Like, I don't agree with that. Let me tell you why. There are things in the culture that we cannot understand as Americans. There are things in the Quran that we will never understand because we have not studied the Quran. And so think about this. I want you to think about this. Imagine you are right now living your life and you have your beliefs and you have your culture. And all of a sudden you have foreign invaders come into your territory and tell you you can no longer believe what you believe. You can no longer worship the way you've been taught to worship, and that everything about your existence is wrong. That is literally what happened to the Afghanistani people for centuries. And they have been fighting for their beliefs. They have been fighting for their culture, and they've been fighting for their way of life for a long time. You even see now a number of young Black influencers on apps like TikTok, where they're literally trying to revive things like Gullah Geechee language and the Tut language and all these different elements and dialects of African American speech, because it no longer exists. That is exactly what the Afghanistani people are fighting for. And they see Americans as the number one threat to their existence. And they are willing to do anything they can to wipe that threat out. So I'm not making an excuse for what they believe. I'm just simply saying that, in my opinion, There are ways that we could have gone about fixing these issues that we didn't do. And here's a prime example. Look at the progress made in Iraq. I never agreed or supported the war in Iraq, but we left Iraq with a level of stability that we did not leave in Afghanistan, or that we're not leaving in Afghanistan. Totally different wars, totally different countries, and they needed totally different approaches. But again, the results are also totally different. So I just want to, again, bring that out. Iraq isn't falling apart. Iraq is still a viable country that is moving forward. And I don't believe that we're going to see that in Afghanistan, because the democratically elected leadership of that country has already fled. It's going to be taken over by Taliban warlords and, what we deem as terrorists. And it will pose a great threat, especially with them having our military weapons and machinery now at their disposal to wreak havoc all around the Middle East. In the same way that they're going to be there to wreak havoc in the Middle East, we had Aaliyah's uncle and manager wreaking havoc over her legacy. Vince, tell us about it.
Yeah, so the internet and just the entire Aaliyah fan base woke up to some great news. I want to say about a week ago that her music will finally be released on streaming services or what have you. So nearly 20 years after her tragic death, the Princess of R&B's catalog will be available on streaming starting August 20th. And Barry Hankerson, which is her uncle and founder of her label, Blackground Records, said to Billboard, or an interview that he did with Billboard. So albums like One in a Million, Aaliyah, I Care for You, so on and so forth will be released chronologically between August 20th to October 8th. So what took so long? The delay, according to Hankerson, stemmed from disagreements with Aaliyah's estate, i.e. her family, which she said previously expressed a desire to take her catalog off the market. Going deeper into that reason, I don't know if you guys were able to watch the interview. I thought it was a pretty good interview, if you will, specifically with her mother. She said that it was just basically, paraphrasing, it would be very painful to continuously hear Aaliyah's voice on the radio, performing, so on and so forth, while her child is no longer in the present or what have you. So that was, I believe a good reason why anyone probably wouldn't want to continue to have, to continue that music coming around or what have you, just those painful memories or what have you. So this is the thing. Apparently, Barry Hankerson and Aaliyah's mother haven't truly come to an agreement in regards to her music. He said that through these years, he's followed Aaliyah's mother's wishes and has not released her music. However, the estate has come out recently saying that it has not been cleared or approved or agreed rather by them that her that the music should be released. But the problem goes a little bit deeper too, because speaking from the Blackground perspective, Blackground Records has never really had a good reputation in the music industry through the years. Tony Braxton had an album with Blackground. Tank was signed to them. JoJo was signed to them. Timbaland Magoo, the Romeo Must Die soundtrack. And for some reason, all of those soundtracks and albums never made it to streaming. They were taken off the shelves and all this stuff. And now all of a sudden they're reappearing. And just to go into the JoJo situation, one of her fans tweeted, was like, "Hey JoJo, congratulations, your albums are about to be released now." If you don't know a lot about JoJo's specific story, she released 2 albums on Blackground. Both those albums were taken off the shelves, and she could not get out of her contract. I think she was like on a 10-year contract with them, something that was just terrible. And that's why she started like releasing underground mixtapes and just all this stuff. And her reply to the fan was, because she recently re-recorded all of those albums over again so she can reap the benefits and the money from it. She said, in actuality, even Blackground re-releasing my actual albums, I still won't receive any profit from them. So please continue to stream my re-recorded versions. So my question to you all is, with Blackground and Harry and the Aaliyah estate, do you think that it's a money move? Did the well run dry with Harry and he's just trying to get, just more money from all the artists again, all these albums again? Or do you agree with the Aaliyah estate? Should the music and her legacy just be left untouched and not offered to the fans? Like, what's your whole thoughts behind this?
Well, I'm hoping that they're actually going to release the music, because this has been allegedly it was supposed to be dropped January of this year or January of last year. it was supposed to be available on all music platforms. I do think the money has run dry, and now he's just like, come on, let me go ahead and release it. But I mean, if they're going to release the music, release the music. I've heard a lot of shady stuff about background records and the whole JoJo story. I was aware of that and everything. So with Tank as well. But I just think it's some other stuff going on behind the scenes with the family that they're not really sharing. But that's my thought.
I think, I don't know. It's interesting that they want to like keep it in a vault. I think that as creatives, when you release bodies of work, you understand that these things will outlive you. So though Aaliyah is not with us physically, her music could always be here to support her estate. For people who like myself, I'm not sure when Aaliyah was popping. I'm sure that y'all might have a better idea of that, as I'm just like a little younger than y'all. But I can't say that Aaliyah is a great vocalist. I can't say that because I don't have a robust understanding of Aaliyah's work or who she is. So it would be good for me. I think also good as long as things with the business are taken care of. Then I can't see Aaliyah saying, "When I die, bear my music with me." I just can't see that. I can't see that anyone saying that. So as long as the business is on the up and up, I think they should come to some sort of agreement and let this let this woman's legacy live on for generations like myself moving forward who would love to hear more of Aaliyah's work.
Mind you, we're only talking about 2 albums that are not released. It's 1 in a Million and her self-titled Aaliyah album.
So there's some other things out there.
Well, so AJ Nothing But a Number has always been on a music platform because that was R. Kelly's project. So that's always been on Apple Music and stuff like that, right? But 1 in a Million and her self-titled album Aaliyah, which was her last album, was the only 2 that's not on there. And then Romeo Must Die, Try Again is not on there, and I Care For You are the only 2 songs. I Could Be Without You from the Friday soundtrack is on platforms though. So it's 2 albums. That's why I'm like, why are they holding on to those 2 albums? Like we can't get it in those 2 songs. It's not like she has like an extensive catalog. And Aaliyah was that girl back in her day. Yes, she was. I wouldn't say she was a powerhouse singer, no, but she could sing and she can dance and she can act.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, CJ. Like she literally was the go-to girl. Especially during that time frame. And so I hate the fact that that's actually I hate the fact that that's even something we're even having a conversation about it. I just release her stuff. But I do think that my fear is, and I guess I should ask CJ or Vince, at the end of the day, though, who has more to gain by the release?
So Vince might know more of this because, see, for years I heard it was the family, but then I heard Timbaland and Missy has something to do with it as well. I don't know how true that is. I heard that they were trying, like saying they didn't want the music released as well because they worked with Aaliyah pretty much her whole career after AJ Nothing But a Number. So I don't really know. So I think Vince might know a little bit more, but it's been just mixed stories for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, CJ. It's definitely been mixed stories just through the years. I think at the end of the day, Harry and Black Ground has always just had this shady representation in the industry, and I think that a lot of the blame and the profits will go to him because even in the midst of the dealings with her music, these 2 albums, like CJ said, now being able to be available on streaming, as well as the other host of albums from all these other artists that were affected by Black Ground Records, or what have you. He actually got the independent label and the publishing companies together to be a part of this project of this resurgence. So again, this is like all of his.
Now, wait, did he have anything to do with the biopic?
You said I don't know anything about the biopic. I don't think anybody liked that biopic. That Lifetime.
No, did he have anything to do with it? Because I feel like that would have been the time to release all the music when they released the biopic. Because I know there was a lot of controversy about that biopic too. The family was mad that certain things were put in there and that wasn't put in there. Like there was a whole big controversy about that biopic. Yeah,
I'm not too sure about the biopic. I didn't watch it because I don't think the intent was like the TLC biopic when they were involved.
I did watch it. It was okay, but I think there was a lot of hidden gems and a lot of things that weren't really spoke on that should have been spoke on in the biopic.
Right. So I think it's a Harry and Black Ground Records shady business going on.
And I think, where's Dame Dash in all this? Like, I feel like Dame Dash should have some kind of say-so because that was her significant other. Now, I know he spoke up about the biopic because he was not happy how he was portrayed in the biopic. Now, I did hear that. But I feel like if anything, he should have some kind of say-so as well since he was, her significant other. If I'm not mistaken, they were engaged.
But see, then here becomes my other concern, because now I believe it's a ripple effect, because then you have to start asking yourself the question. I know we don't want to talk about it, but then you have to ask yourself the question. Exactly how much does R. Kelly have in the mix of things? Because you got to remember, R. Kelly was doing a lot of her dealings and things of nature. So the question becomes, and the other question becomes, as Vince was talking, was he holding it because it creates a ripple effect throughout his entire business? Because now there are other contracts and other things that he's going to now have to actually deal with. And so was she the catalyst that could have possibly spiraled everything else? So it becomes so again, the question becomes who we still don't know, I think, enough to get everybody's reasoning and rationales why, and who has to benefit from it. And does her mom, does her people actually get any benefits from it? Because there were still, when we go back to think about some of the things that their parents had to sign, even when she was with R. Kelly, there's just so many things that we just don't know that might be tied together with Aaliyah. And so I'm just curious to know all the information, and if not only just her legacy, but will the people who are supposed to get what they're supposed to get from her work get what they deserve as well?
Absolutely. And the brother too, because I know the brother and her was really, really close. Because when Aaliyah passed away, I remember distinctly, he actually gave a whole speech at the MTV Music Awards when she passed away. They look exactly alike too. So I wonder, how he feels. Where it's just a lot of hidden, things going on.
I mean, but the thing about it is, when you write contracts, there shouldn't be anything that's hidden. And so if she signed a contract, there should be, situational things that, like, if this happens, then these are my beneficiaries, or if this happens, then this. So at the end of the day, whatever they do, if it's legal, that means she signed it. So I don't think that it should be held up just because certain people don't benefit from the project, if it's a contract that.
Well, I hope that they really drop the music, because this has been an ongoing thing. They gave specific dates that music was going to get dropped and her catalog was going to get dropped, and then the ball drops, and it never happened. So this is not the first time that they said this. So hopefully they follow suit and they actually drop it.
And in addition to that, another thing that I side-eyed is that there's a remix album that she's going to put out, and Chris Brown is on it, Snoop Dogg is on it.
Leah has joined the show. Hey, Leah has joined. We're talking about her. She decided to join us.
Child, that is Aaliyah Brooks. Do not boost her head up to think that she is Aaliyah rocking the boat.
Aaliyah may not be rocking the boat, but my love, you are one in a million.
But she will drive the boat. Ain't it right, Leah?
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, luckily for me, anytime that I want to hear an Aaliyah song, I can go to my box of CDs, pull out I have every single one of the Aaliyah albums that was there.
Yeah, and that makes you how old again?
How old were you when you bought those?
Well, he's Benjamin Button. He's aging backwards.
Are they 8 tracks, or are they
CDs?
Are they CDs?
These are indeed CDs, and in addition to having them on CDs, I still have them on Apple Music, which I don't use, but I bought them years ago, so I have them there. So the thing, or upload them, or whatever I had to do to
Wait,
get them.
Can you buy her albums on Apple Music? I don't think you can on iTunes.
I think I bought them on iTunes a long time ago. I would have to check, but I'm almost certain that they're on
Napster. You probably used one of those phishing sites.
Napster. Yeah, I remember Napster.
Now y'all know I was a toddler when that.
I was gonna say, you old enough for Napster? I was like, wait a minute.
Real high girl.
The point is, I can listen to Aaliyah whenever I want to listen to Aaliyah.
I mean, you can now. All you gotta do is go to YouTube and play her old albums on YouTube. I mean,
I like to hear the quality of the music, and I won't say anything else. Again, I like Aaliyah, but I definitely have my own opinions about, But again, she was a great pop vocalist, pop soul, pop R&B, a pop style that really fit the moment. We have another sad story that really talks about you know, what went wrong? And do we have exactly, Dr. Weishan, again, the cloud could go away at any moment, but our cities are tangible and they're going to be here. You
But
know,
then that cracks up.
about this young lady who was shot on Zoom by her child. Tell us about it.
Samaya Lynn, 21 years old, of Almonte Springs in Florida, last Wednesday was on a Zoom call for work, and she had a loaded gun in her home, which belonged to the father of the child, and the child got a hold of the gun and shot her in the head. Someone that was on, one of her coworkers on the Zoom call actually seen it and immediately called 911. By the time 911 got to the house, they were unable to bring her back to life or try to save her life, and she passed away. 21, you know. Of course, no charges have been filed. I mean,
Hey, mommy.
Mama Vera, you know, no charges have been filed. I mean, I don't think they can convict a toddler, you know. But I brought this up because it's just like I heard a lot of stories, and seen a lot of stories about people just leaving loaded guns around kids or in the house, not locked up in safes, or fully loaded with clips, or not having the safety on. It's like, I don't understand why these parents keep doing this. The kids, especially a toddler, they don't know any better. They don't know what it is. So of course they pick it up to play with it or whatever. They don't know what's going on. So it just makes me ask the question, why do parents keep doing this? Or why do people keep doing this when you know you have kids in the house? Why aren't these things locked up in a safe to where these kids can't get it? I get why people want to have guns because of the climate that we live in right now and things that are going on within our world. But it's just like, this lady was only 21 years old. I mean, just became really legal and adult. And I feel bad for the family. And then what a horrific scene for someone on a Zoom call to see that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just terrible.
The sad part about it is, and this is nothing against any parent that actually could. I have, you know, firearms and so forth, but I also am a firm believer, if you don't take precautions to ensure that the safety of your gun, I feel, especially if you have children in the household, that's child endangerment, because of the fact that you could potentially putting that child in, because not only if that child, I mean, that you shot them, what if that child would have actually harmed themselves instead of that individual? And then, of course, the damage. We talk about the people watching it. What is that damage to that child that's actually shot? What is that now done? The mental state of that child now. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, these are. I believe people having their gun rights and everything else. But again, it's in these moments we have to take special precaution as a parent, or just in general, and person in general, just to protect yourself and others. And so my heart bleeds for that. But again, it's in these moments. I hate to say it, but we unfortunately have to have these moments to have these conversations so that we're able to start educating people on ways that we need to ensure our safety in doing those things, like putting these things away. And so my heart goes out to that family. But this is also a conversation piece for us to start having these real conversations about how do we protect ourselves in the safest way possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I found some facts from nationwidechildren.org. I think that's like a leading pediatric children's health website, if you will, in regards to gun safety and gun myths as it relates to children. So 1 in 3 families with children have at least one gun in the house. It is estimated that there are more than 22 million children living in homes with guns. Most of the victims of unintentional shootings are boys. Some parents believe that hiding their guns will prevent children from accessing them. However, 75% of children who live in homes with guns know where they are stored. And lastly, many parents think their children are not capable of firing a gun. However, children as young as 3 years old may be strong enough to pull the trigger of a handgun. So we can't, as you know, just as parents or what have you, we cannot negate and just assume that, you know, that children just don't know. I mean, a lot of times when we hear these stories, people often wonder, well, how does a child learn how to do these things? I mean, you can watch the Avengers, you can watch the Power Rangers, children, all these cartoons and things that children are watching. There's guns and lasers and all this stuff. They 2 and 2 equals 4. You know, they can put stuff together. Children are smart. It don't take them long to do that. So I agree with you, Dr. Pickett. Parents that are in the home with guns, they have to just micromanage and exercise their gun safety practices. My question is, though, if you were a parent, do you have the conversation with your child about like, hey, there is a gun in the house, or do you keep it hidden like a, don't ask, don't tell, with hopes that they don't find it? Like, what is that scenario like?
Well, I think in this scenario, it was a toddler, so I don't think she can have a conversation with her. I mean, I'm not saying I would assume that he would understand being a toddler. I mean, maybe he would, but I do think if they're at an age where they understand what's going on, I do think that's a conversation that you should have with your kids. I have a good friend of mine, and he said his nieces and nephews, their parents have guns in the house, and they talk to their kids and say, hey, this is what we have in the house, not to use it, and they also have it locked up in a safe. But they definitely had that conversation. So I agree with you. I think the conversation should be had. But in this scenario, when the child is a toddler, I don't think that's a conversation you can have because they're not going to really understand it.
If a child can understand how to fire off a gun, then they would understand that they shouldn't touch it if you tell them that not to touch this, because it's not like you can just, I don't know. I just don't feel like you mistakenly apply enough force to a trigger to shoot off a bullet. It takes a lot of force.
And I mean, you're having to take off the safety.
Right.
If there was a safety on. So that's another question. There was no safety.
Well, the safety wasn't on in this scenario.
And those are, again, this is just, I'm never going to put.
Right.
I'm never going to put in a victim mode. Right. But again, these are things that we have to do better at. And as Court was saying, and kudos to you, Vince. Like I said, Zach, Vince, when I tell you, for some reason, Vince and these stats that he got coming on these, he got stats every 2 seconds.
Yeah, right.
But it's in these moments that, again, we have to just do a better job of taking precautions. Yeah. And I hate this for her. But again, as Darius was saying, like, listen, you shot the gun. You got to say, like, we just have to do a better job with educating.
Now, and then what about the long-term effect this is going to do on the child? Now, when he becomes of an age to really know what's going on about death and stuff, and now he finds out that he shot his mother,
mm-hmm.
What effect is that going to do to that child? You know what I'm saying? Because right now, kids are really smart, but I don't think he's at an age. If he's a toddler, I'm sure he's not at an age to where he knows the significance of death. So I feel like when he gets to an age where he finds out what actually happened and he was one in the cause of his mother's death, that can do some long-term damage to him as well, or them, he or she.
It's a heartbreaking scenario. I'm really glad that Courtney is with us. Courtney is a member of our armed forces. Thankful for the work that you've done, the sacrifice that you've made. This really goes right into our next and final topic of the night, and it is the fact that our United States military is requiring the COVID vaccine of every single military official and also many of our federal workers. And many jobs are now also requiring the exact same thing. And, before we go on that, Mary said all guns in your home should be locked and unloaded with ammunition locked separately. You are absolutely correct. And I really regret that this young lady did not heed that and know that. Gentlemen, I want to know, what are your thoughts about mandatory vaccines or the loss of employment?
So I actually know someone who's going through this personally, and I don't think it's right. You're forcing I get it. You're forcing people to get vaccinated to slow down the spread of corona. But I mean, they weren't doing this for other things like the flu. The flu was killing people left and right a few years ago, and there's different strains of the flu. Did you just look your eyes up, Darius?
I did.
Whatever.
I was so tired of hearing you say that.
Well, I said it. I stand by what I said. People.
I know, I'm sorry. I did not mean to be disrespectful, CJ.
It's fine. It's cool. I just feel like I think people should have the right to get vaccinated and not get vaccinated. I don't feel like you should try to jeopardize someone's, financial support. Essentially, what it is, their job, to make them get vaccinated. I feel like there should be other ways around it to try to help people get vaccinated, as opposed to trying to force them off their jobs. Here it goes. Right. Why don't I always go for the flu? Because I can go for the flu. That's why. Why are you even speaking on it?
Don't do that. Okay. No, I agree with you to some extent, CJ. I feel like people, as I've said time and time again, somebody tried to check me last week. I had to get them together because they said I was serving up biased information about the vaccine because I want people to take it. I do want people to take the vaccine. But I'm not sharing biased information. I'm sharing about the breakthrough cases. I'm sharing about the numbers that, indicate that it is effective against the Delta variant. I'm sharing a lot of different information. I still feel like it's a highly personal decision that each person has to make. You make the decision about whether or not you want to be vaccinated. But what you don't get to do is not get vaccinated, not have on a mask, and still spread the coronavirus throughout the nation. And I think that for all the conspiracy theorists who feel like the government are trying to off us, why would the government inject 1.3 million troops with this vaccine if they did not trust its efficacy? Why would they put our population at risk in that way? I just think that there's a lot of misinformation. I think that this is a unique opportunity for the government to send a clear message that they actually do trust this vaccine. I also feel like a company reserves the right to make safety precautions for the people that they employ. They reserve the right to make precautions for the people that patronize their business. And we're not saying that you can't work if you don't get the vaccine. You just can't work here. And I feel like every business owner has the right to say that. And if you don't, agree or comply for religious reasons, for conspiracy theory reasons, for Hotep reasons, for Dr. Sebi reasons, for whatever reasons, just find you somewhere else to work.
I'm in full agreement. I don't care. I do not care if you choose to not get the vaccine when it wasn't a threat to my health. I did not care. I don't care. That's your choice. That's your body. That's your life. If you want to put yourself at risk, you do so. If you want to put your kids at risk, they're your kids, you do so. I feel bad for those kids, like I feel bad for the people of Afghanistan, but again, it's beyond my control. Same thing goes with the elderly and immunocompromised that you come in contact with that's a part of your family, but again, it's beyond my control. But when your decision to not get vaccinated has a possibility of now affecting me, that's when I changed course and began to have a different level of dialogue and outrage at the Biden administration for not doing all that administration could have done to protect the American people from this new reality. Had the Biden administration closed off our borders and done things like other countries where you come to America, you immediately tested for COVID-19, you're quarantined for a number of days until those results come back, then you're allowed to go out into the population, then you're allowed to return for another test, then you can't leave this country and we have a contact tracing that's effective, then I would be mad at the Biden administration. If these things would have happened where military officials would have been vaccinated prior to this, because our military service members get lots of vaccines. They get lots of things that are unfortunately sometimes experimental all across the international community. Had this happened earlier, I would have also probably not been as angry as I am now at the Biden administration. But again, all of that to say, too little too late, he's already earned my wrath and my disappointment and my ire. And I'm going to continue to talk about it, probably a little bit longer. I definitely believe that the employer has the right to do these things. I do feel bad for people that are truly, genuinely opposed because of true, genuine religious reasons. I believe that members of certain faiths, like Jehovah's Witnesses, may not do vaccines. And I regret that they're being caught up in this because the reality is this: if we would have gained herd immunity, they wouldn't have to get a vaccine. They would still be okay because we would have done our part as Americans to protect our fellow citizens who, because of religious reasons or because of medical exemptions, can't get vaccinated. So I really do feel bad for those individuals. I do. I feel bad for them. So I do feel bad for those medical exemptions.
For me, I sort of see both sides. I do like what Miss Casey said. It's a public safety issue at this point. Common sense. Hold on, no, it was another thing. Some of the same people allow their children to get other vaccines like chickenpox, measles, polio, and others. And especially when you're a child and you enter into the school system, those things are mandated. When you travel, to like Africa and some Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, you have to get shots and stuff like that in order to travel. So I do feel, regardless of your belief in regards to this specific vaccine, it's going to be a requirement somewhere down the line, regardless, in the years to come. However, I think that in this current season, because in my opinion, Biden was premature in reopening the country or what have you, I think that companies still need to offer a contingency plan for those employers that just don't want to take the vaccine at this moment. Some people may just be in sheer fear. Some people may just be extremely apprehensive for that or what have you. Whatever your position or optic is about the vaccine, I think that companies in this moment, because we were slingshotted into this situation, should have enough respect and decency and integrity to at least offer, again, contingency plans for these people to work at home. You know, I remember working at the stadium. They were trying to like create teams, like Team A, which is 30 people come in on Mondays, and Team B come in. Like, I don't know what strategies they could do until we can sort of quell and, like you said, Zach, get into herd immunity position as a country in its totality. But I don't think they should just force people, immediately cut them off if you don't have it at this current time. You know, like I don't like that you blocking people money for that, because it's sort of like, it's like you, like I said in earlier conversations, we did not bring this virus to ourselves. Nobody was like, "Ooh, let me start COVID and kill 600,000 people." Nobody did that. So this virus came upon us, and now we've done sat through the consequences, been penalized, shut down, all this stuff. And then when you want to reopen the country, you slingshot me back into the workforce, and now put me tooth and nail against something and making me getting something off of something that I didn't even do. Is like you making me take parole off of a crime I didn't commit. Like, that's not my fault. That's not my problem. That's not my issue. I didn't do this. That is not my fault. But I'm being faulted and penalized and being held with consequences over something that is completely out of my being. I didn't create this. That ain't my issue. So I sort of see public health, and I sort of see just personal initiative. Like, bro, this shit still ain't my fault. Like,
but here's the thing, Vince. I mean, to some extent, it might not be our fault that it was created, but we have not been able to band together in a way to, you know, get rid of this pandemic that we're in. And I'll just say, for instance, like, if you're, as a business owner, if my options are, number one, to let my employees walk around knowing that they will potentially end up on a ventilator, in a hospital, terribly sick. Now I got to shut down my business for a week because there was exposure, or now I'm, you know, facing different, you know, things because now my business is being affected when science is telling me that this vaccine is helping to mitigate that issue. So as a business owner, I have the right to make a decision that I'm going to be a part of the solution. And I'll just say, even in Atlanta, people going back to schools right now. At one school, they have a whole grade level quarantine, two third grade classes, a first grade class, and several others are quarantined, as well as 12 teachers. Yet the entire
what school is that?
I'm not going to say what school it is, but
but isn't it? Didn't you get that from the news?
No, I didn't. I got it from one of my teacher friends.
If it's inside information, then that's different.
But yet the schools are still expected to go back face to face, and just the idea that we're still adding fuel to this already out of control fire is beyond me. We've tried to shut it all the way down. We've tried to get people to wear a mask. We've tried to get people to social distance. We've tried to get people to get vaccinated. What do we do now? Just let people die? So I think that, you know, it's one of those things, like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Like, you just have to make the best decision for yourself, for your entities, for your business, for whatever, you know, whatever decision you make. And people will have to deal with it. Like, if your views and your values no longer align with this company's views and values, maybe this company is not the one for you to be a part of anymore.
Because we're on the precipice of, again, a true crisis. If we go right back to where every American possibly faces life-threatening illness from COVID-19, you have a whole body of people that are vaccinated who can work and continue to keep industry open and continue to keep the American economy functioning. But if those people are not going to be once again jeopardized because of those who did not get, or who could either did not get vaccinated or who could not get vaccinated, we're never going to be able to recover. There is no more stimulus money to benefit these businesses. And I agree with you, Darius. They're making good decisions for their own existence and their own livelihoods. And you're right. It is a horrible way to die. if you get the virus. It's a horrible way to die. It is horrible. It is heartbreaking. But it's also just stunning to me. Like when I hear about the deaths from COVID-19, I'm touched. I am shocked, and I am committed to keeping myself and those I love protected. I'm just shocked that people can watch these news stories, read these articles, see these Facebook clips, and then say to themselves, it's all fake, this isn't real, or it's still a cold. I'm just baffled by that. But with that being said, we are definitely at, Darius, give you the last word, but we're definitely at, 5 minutes over. And, we definitely have to include with our, 365 Black history. Darius.
Yes, okay, so I'll go right into that. But okay, what's been interesting is that a lot of people are denying the vaccine because it's not FDA approved. It will very soon be FDA approved. And I'm wondering if people's tones will change. I'm sure that they will not, but I'll be happy when that is no longer an excuse on the table. And so now I'll go into the Black History 365 moment for the night. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Liberia. I want to say it's Liberia. Let me make sure I'm correct. Yes, Liberia was.
It is Liberia.
Liberia was started on this date. It was incorporated by freed, formerly enslaved Americans who had been freed, and they went back to right below Sierra Leone, which is on the peninsula in West Africa. And within 2 years, they were able to settle Sierra Leone as the first formerly enslaved people from the United States that arrived at Sierra Leone. They were able to form Liberia, which was for freed U.S. slaves outside of British jurisdiction. So that is our Black History Month.
What United States president helped make this a reality?
I saw that as well. Who was it?
It was President Monroe, and that is why to this day the capital of Liberia is Monrovia. So shout out to President Monroe for being somewhat ahead of his time, but not really, because he's one of these black folk gone. He definitely saw that slavery was not a lasting institution for the United States of America, and wanted a path to try to undo the wrong of the American people. If only we would have had more presidents like him after him, but we did not. Thank you, guys. That's right, Monrovia. Thank you guys so much for another great week. And for those of you who are wanting to continue to chat and talk about some more lighthearted issues, we have the after show happening on IG right now. We'll see you next week.